Okay, good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. My name is Laura Egan O'Brien, and I'm the Marketing Manager for the College of Engineering and Architecture here in UCD. And I'm going to be your host for today's session, and I'd like to warmly welcome you all to this webinar, which is our Architecture, Landscape Architecture, and City Planning and Environmental Policy student webinar. Many of you joining us, I know, this evening will have already placed one of these programs on your CEO form, or maybe you're considering it as part of the Change of Mind window, or you may already be an offer holder through our direct entry route. So wherever you are in that particular journey, we're delighted to have you here with us this evening. This is really to kind of give you a chance to hear directly from the people who know these programs best, our current students, and also to get you an honest sense of what it's like to study here, both academically and socially. A couple of quick housekeeping notes just before we begin. So please feel free to type any questions that you have to us today using the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen, and we'll get through as many of them as we can in the session at the end of the kind of presentation pieces. Also to let you know, the session is being recorded. So if you do need to leave early or you want to revisit anything at a later date, that recording will be shared with anyone who registered and also available on our college YouTube channel early next week. Also, keep an eye on the chat as my colleague Katie O'Neill is joining us, and at times we'll pop any useful links that are mentioned throughout the webinar there as well. And then before we meet our panel, just to highlight that at UCD, our School of Architecture, Planning and Environmental Policy, often known as APEP, brings together the disciplines of architecture, landscape architecture, and city planning and environmental policy in one unique school that is focused on shaping the future of our built and natural environment. And what makes this really exciting is that while these are the distinct programs, they all share a common purpose, and that is helping students creatively and critically to think about how we design, plan, and sustain the places where people live, they work, and they connect. And whether you're interested in designing buildings and spaces through architecture, designing healthier, more sustainable environments through landscape architecture, or tackling those big issues like housing, climate change, or sustainable development through city planning and environmental policy, you'll be joining a school that's focused on solving real world challenges. And with that in mind, I'm going to introduce our panel to give you a better understanding of these programs and what it's like and what is on offer for students like yourselves. So this evening we are joined by Alice Clancy, our program director for our architecture program. We're also joined by Beck, a third year architecture student, Lisa, a second year architecture student, Olivia, a second year landscape architecture student, and Matthias, a second year city planning student. So first up, I'm going to hand you over to Alice Clancy, as I said, our program director for architecture.
Thanks very much, Laura. And hello, everybody. Thanks so much for joining us. I'm here coming to you from the first year architecture studios, where we're working on our end of year exhibition. So we've just finished up for the year, and we're looking forward to welcoming everybody on Friday to open this. And I'll extend that invitation to all of you as well. So I'm going to just very quickly give you a refresh and overview on the program. I won't go into too much detail, as some of you may have seen this before, but it's just to refresh maybe your memory on what it is we do in architecture, and how we work, particularly within the first 3 years of the program. So as Laura was saying, we're part of the School of Architecture, Landscape Architecture, Planning, Environmental Policy, and we're in this lovely part of campus called Richview and Newstead, which is over in the west of campus. And well, it's not quite the sunny day today. This is kind of, we work around this quad in the middle, and it's just a lovely place on the edge of campus, but also connected to. So this school is part of this larger ecosystem of the College of Engineering and Architecture. But architecture at UCD is actually the oldest architecture course in the country. It's over 100 years old. But despite our age, the curriculum is really dynamic, and we're continually adapting and developing what we teach, how we teach, and where we teach. And most recently, over the past 4 years, in collaboration with staff and students all over Ireland, architecture staff and students all over Ireland, to redevelop our undergraduate years to better equip you with the skills and the capacity to address the climate and housing crisis. So we put a big emphasis on preparing you to be ethical, skilled, and thoughtful future practitioners, able to adapt to the changing architecture profession and the construction ecosystem as we embrace climate resilience. So there's over 5 years of study across the undergraduate and the MArch programs. You're going to learn the skills, knowledge, and tools to enable you to address these complex challenges that are evolving and developing related to the care and the design of the built environment. So we have a fantastic program with studio design studio at its heart. So the design studio represents over half of your credits across the 5 years, and in the first 3 years, half of your credits. And there you work in these beautiful studios. You get a desk for the year, and you work with your colleagues and with some of the best architects in Ireland to develop your architectural design skills. And alongside that, it's complemented by a suite of modules across kind of addressing different aspects related to the design and thinking of the design of the built environment. Most notably, our history and theory course, where we have some really eminent researchers who work with you to think about, critique, and understand the sort of the history, but also the aspects that shape the built environment. Another key part of our course is our technology course, which starts kind of with a very analog and hands-on approach in first year and develops into quite a sophisticated, what we call comprehensive design project in the fourth year of term. And then we have a suite of other modules related to environment, practice, representation, photography, things like that, and option modules. But those are the kind of the key, the kind of the core of the course. So coming across and just very quickly with your first year, we take this very, very hands-on approach, and it's an introductory foundation to kind of introduce you to what students do. And it encompasses a range of approaches. So in second year, we start to look maybe more closely at buildings, places, and people. And it's great. We have a second year student here. Thank you, Lisa. Who's going to, we start to embrace digital design and representation, and we start to think about community and how we build now and making the best use of existing materials, resources, and collaborative techniques, most notably with an emphasis on healthy materials, environments, adaptive reuse, and passive design strategies. And in the second year in the studio, we have this field studio where the students occupy a vacant building on campus, and they reimagine how that might be used while occupying it as their studio as well. So you get to connect to main campus in a big way. What also happens in stage two as you start to get more into the student life. We have a very active ArcSoc, organising lectures, debates, events, parties as well, all related to architecture and kind of thinking about architectural culture and how it's changing, but also what kind of maybe some more aspects of it related to Irish architectural culture. And as you come into stage three, and we have a third year student here, Beck, thank you, Beck. We start to kind of focus and to think about synthesizing your work a little bit more. So you're going to get a kind of more deeper, sustained study across the studio design project, but you also get into more detail in the 5 credit modules where you're going to develop your critical thinking and design skills across, but also exploring modes of practice and preparing for what we have as our year out, where you take practical experience, can travel, and thinking about your postgraduate pathways. So coming into the master's program in stage 4. So I won't go into the master's program because we don't have time today, but it is an excellent course, and there's an opportunity to study abroad as well through our Erasmus program. But if you're interested and you're in Dublin or close by, you're very, very welcome to come down and join us this Friday evening. We're opening our end of year exhibition. You're going to see work across from the 5 years, and it'll be open for 2 weeks. So you're very welcome to come down during working hours and have a look at the work if you are around. So I'll leave it there and I'll pass it back to you, Laura.
Thank you very much, Alice. Very exciting to hear about the exhibition happening as well. So we're going to move on now to some students giving a bit of a flavour of what it is to be a student in these courses. So first up we have is Beck, a third year architecture student.
Hello, my name's Beck. So I mainly chose UCD for architecture specifically because of the reputation and the facilities, I suppose, and also like the opportunities connected to the course. So the main thing that stood out to me was like the Erasmus and exchange options. For instance, the TU Delft is one of the options, and it's number three in the whole world. Um, I also heard really good things about the alumni network as well, the tutors and like the overall support that you get during your studies. One thing I've really enjoyed during the course is how hands-on it is. A lot of the projects feel very real and practical. So like you're constantly like applying what you learn instead of just memorizing stuff. I've enjoyed working on design projects, learning how to think differently and about spaces and how people interact with these spaces. Um, the studio environment is also like really interesting because everyone has different ideas and approaches, and you can just go up to them and ask them questions, and it's like a good environment to learn from each other as well. The teaching experience has honestly been very positive. The tutors are approachable and genuinely they want to help you. Um, Architecture can definitely be intense at times, especially during finals and deadlines. But there's like a strong sense that the tutors and the staff want you to succeed. The classes are very interactive, and there's like a clear balance between lectures and studio work and final reviews and feedback. So settling into UCD was actually easier than I expected at the start. It can feel like a big change, but once you get involved and meet new people in your course, it becomes much more comfortable. Um, yeah.
Great. Thank you so much, Beck. Great to hear you've had a good experience in the course so far. So we do have another architecture student. So we have Lisa, who is in second year currently.
Hi. Um, so I chose architecture because I've always liked art and like drawing was always my favorite subject in school. But I didn't want to study strictly art, and I kind of have a maths in between the two sort of fields for me. And then the reason I chose UCD to do it was I wanted to go to Dublin because it's near enough to where I live, but also it kind of has a very large student population in general, not even just UCD, just the city compared to anywhere else in Ireland. And UCD just stood out because of, like I said before, the campus and all the facilities and everything. Also like there's like three gyms, there's two big sports halls, loads of clubs and societies, everything like that. Then about the actual course, one module that really I think is very helpful, we have an engineering and architecture class, yeah, the second semester of first year and second year. I don't know about the rest, but we basically work with structural engineers in groups and then do like a group sort of design engineering project. And I think that's really helpful, sort of setting you up for what it would be like to work in an actual company industry. Another thing is that like this semester, second semester of second year, we had a option to pick an elective, which I think makes such a beneficial like difference because it kind of lets you choose something completely different to what you're doing. It can be something related if you want, but I chose like biology. It has nothing to do with what I'm doing. But I just think it's nice to be able to do something completely different from what you're doing, and you kind of get a whole other experience of what college life is like. Like we don't have lectures in like big halls or anything like that, but you can still have a chance to experience that. As far as actual architecture, it's kind of not like other courses with the way you have your desk in your studio. So it's your own space and you can leave all your stuff there and you get to know the people sitting around you. And then we have tutorials. We've like one-on-one tutorials. So the tutors will go around the room and look at your work and kind of give you feedback and advice, which is super helpful, especially when it's not like in a class and you don't have to like put up your hand to ask questions. You're just having a like genuine conversation about your work, which is, yeah, it's so helpful. Um, then about settling in, I lived on campus in first year, which I think most first years get campus accommodation, if I'm not mistaken, which I thought was so great because it kind of forces you to make friends in a way with the people you're living with. Um, and just kind of, if you don't have friends from your course or whatever right away, you just get to know even a small group of people, even if they're not going to be your best friends for the rest of your life. It's just nice to have some people that you get to know quickly. Um, yeah, I think that's mostly what I had to say.
Great. Thank you so much, Lisa. And then we do also have a student from landscape architecture here. So Olivia is in second year of our landscape architecture program, and she's going to talk to us about that particular course.
Hi everyone, my name is Olivia and I'm a second year landscape architecture student. So in sixth year, I knew I wanted to lean more into my artistic side. I loved the idea of designing open spaces and I wanted to do a degree that would allow me to express creativity while still being challenging and mentally stimulating. Landscape architecture turned out to be exactly that. I chose UCD specifically because it's the only college in Ireland that offers an undergraduate landscape architecture program accredited by the Irish Landscape Institute. So that aspect, together with the studio facilities and the overall energy of the campus, really made it a good choice for me. Um, I think the biggest misconception about this degree in particular is that we just design gardens, and the reality is that it's so much bigger than that. You are essentially training to be a spatial problem solver, dealing with urban and environmental issues. Our professors definitely push us to look to the future of the industry. Because of that, the teaching style is also very different from other degrees, I think. We don't just sit in lecture halls memorizing information. Our learning happens mainly in the design studio, so you'd get your own desk space similarly to architecture, and the class size is quite tight knit. So you're able to get a lot of one-on-one feedback from your professors. Um, and that just feels much more like working in a design office rather than a classroom. Year one for me was really about unlearning how I looked at the landscape and rebuilding that. You learn how to read a site, sketch ideas, and communicate concepts visually. And then in year two, you start combining design, ecology, and civil engineering. A big benefit to how we work is the vertical studio setup. So while each year has its own specific module requirement, the main design studio theme applies across the board. So for example, my year one theme was electric landscapes and year two was post-fossil urban infrastructure. Because of this, you end up working side by side with more experienced students, so you learn a big amount from each student's approach, whether that's a first year's idea or a master's student opinion. So to give you a specific project example, I just finished working on a project where I was looking at 2050 climate models, and I was looking to design ways to um, essentially figure out how to use the landscape as infrastructure to protect Dublin from flooding. We don't just study these strictly on paper either. We have the opportunity to travel to experience how other cities approach urban design and infrastructure firsthand. So with recent studio trips to places like Rotterdam and Berlin, which I was a part of, we're taught a lot of transferable industry standard skills as well. So by second year, you're able to map geographical data and build 3D models. The workload is heavy and demands time management, but honestly, seeing a massive project come together at the end of the year is so rewarding. In terms of settling into campus life, for me, it was quite simple because of the shared time in the studio and our trips abroad, especially. I felt that the year group bonded very fast. We were encouraged to collaborate to solve design problems, and professors genuinely care about individual progress on top of that, which really helps. Of course, project deadlines can get daunting, which is why I think balancing your time with the campus life UCD offers is very important. So for me personally, getting involved with societies like even like LARCSOC or GameStalk has been a lifesaver. It's a really good way to step out of that bubble of the studio and to relieve stress and connect with friends from even completely different courses. Yeah, and just overall, the degree mixes aspects of design, civil engineering, ecology, and city planning. There's a lot of industry connections as well. In year three, you complete professional internships either locally or um, through either locally through trusted firms or abroad in places like Versailles. I know some people are going to Munich in California. Next year, we also showcase our work at the end of the year exhibition to industry firms and external examiners, which is just a really good networking opportunity. We collaborate across departments as well. So I recently worked with the civil engineering students on a Winthrop engineering project solving demands for data centers. But yeah, I think just to finish off, the beauty of the degree is just how versatile it is. So you're graduating with a mix of design, science, and technical skills, which places you in a very high demand, future-proof industry. You can really go anywhere from traditional design and environmental consulting to shaping city policy or managing infrastructure for global engineering corporations. Um, yeah, and yeah, I think that's everything from me. I think
Great.
covered
Thank you so
everything
much.
I wanted to. Thank
That's
you.
perfect. A great overview of our landscape architecture course. And then last but not least, our speaker, Matthias, is a second year city planning and environmental policy student.
Hello, everyone. Thanks, Laura, for introducing me. So I'm in my second year of planning and environmental policy here in UCD. We're also located in Richview with the architects, and not too far away from the landscape architects. So I suppose what led me to choosing city planning in UCD was a long time interest in the built environment, in the natural environment, and things like transport and sustainability. I've been a member of my local Corlin and Oak and also the National Youth Assembly of Ireland, and stuff like the environment and climate are issues that often come up there. So it's been really good to kind of have a course, and that because while I'm interested in the built environment, I'm not particularly artistically inclined. So I feel city planning is a perfect fit for me, because I get to know about it and get to learn about it, but I don't have to do the drawing. Um, one of the probably the most interesting thing about the course is our studio modules. They're slightly different in terms of what happens than the architecture and landscape architecture, but the same principle is there. So while we do have quite a lot of lectures, learning about all sorts of things, from economics to land use, and environmental policies, the planning system in Ireland and history and stuff like that, we then get to go into our studio and apply all that learning to a specific site or an area. For example, this year, I just finished a project on Rathmines where we conducted a land use survey, which we then analysed and got to then um, come up with, a SWOT analysis, see what the area needs, what it's missing, and what's already good there. And then we proceeded to do a small, I suppose, design proposal for a specific site in the area that needed to be improved. So it's very good in the studio to, I suppose, get all that lecture material and information that you accumulate and actually put it into practice on a real life site that's relatively close to campus. And you can walk around, you can see what's going on. Um, on top of that, I suppose the teaching experience in CPEP has been amazing. I really do like my lecturers and all the CPEP staff. they're all lovely. They're all really approachable whenever there's any issues with assignments or, God forbid, group projects. They're always very, very, I suppose, welcoming and easy to talk to and willing to help out. Um, and as well, the classes are quite small. There's about 35 in my class. So you do really get to kind of know each other quite well. A lot of us would go out together on nights out and stuff, and I know that's the case across the years, especially with things like the planning society we have. Um, it's a relatively small society, so maybe our funding isn't up there with, the likes of the LAWSOC or the LNH, but we really do make do with what we have. Hosting pub quizzes, coffee mornings, lectures, trips abroad, even, and to other cities around Ireland. Like PepSoc has been, we had a trip to Galway. Last year I organised a trip to Belfast, and just the semester before, um, the Planning Society went to Prague as well, where they had a range of different, I suppose, tours and stuff, not only related to the built environment and planning, but also other typical touristy things. Um, so yeah, I think settling into UCD was definitely, it was a big step up coming from secondary school. A relatively large secondary school, but not as big as UCD, obviously. Um, but I think some of the things that really helped me out, obviously, was I mean, the people in my course, they were lovely, and the class size really helped, settle down and get to know people. As well as, the planning society hosting events and coffee mornings. You know, that really helped to get to know my classmates even further, but also people from the other year groups, which has been fantastic. Um, as well as that, I would like to also highlight the fantastic UCD Students' Union, of which I am a member of, and the upcoming Architecture and Planning College Officer. Um, so I was a class rep in first year, which essentially involved me connecting all my fellow, I suppose, classmates, and also first years in landscape architecture, to all the work that the union does, providing welfare supports, guiding people to financial supports, as well as other kind of general issues around campus, kind of pushing for improvement, whether it's stuff like the BDS movement, and a massive, massive amount of other things that the union does. It's truly an amazing experience that I would highly encourage anyone interested to get involved. And yeah, that's it for me. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you so much. And thank you to all our students and to Alice for a great overview of our programs there. So we are going to move on now to the kind of Q&A section of the webinar today. So as we said at the start, if you do have questions, please feel free to type them in. The Q&A button is located at the bottom of your screen there. Type them in and we'll get through as many of them we can. I know there's some there waiting for us to answer now. So we'll start getting through those. So the first one up is to architecture students, or to Alice if you want to answer. Is the design studio, what is the balance between guided work versus open-ended work time? Short exercises versus open work on longer term projects?
Yeah, I might jump in just from, I suppose, from a program point of view, Adrian. In the design studio, the projects are from the very start. I suppose there's a fair bit of self-direction in them, but they start at a kind of quite a small scale in first year, and they're kind of smaller and shorter briefs, and then they start to grow in complexity and grow in length as you go through the program, to the point when you get into your final year, which is year 5 of study, and it's at the end of your MArch. You're working for almost the whole year on a self-directed thesis design project, but it's broken up into a series of stages, and you're always working with your design tutors, who Beck and Lisa have mentioned, and working with external reviewers and practitioners and researchers who come in to talk to you about your work. So there's a balance and it grows in that. But we start you off, particularly in first year, being quite carefully guided through the project, but you're even in first year working on your own or working in groups, and you're trying things out, you're iterating, you're testing things. It's exploratory in the studio. But I'll go back maybe to the architecture students to hear your view on that.
Yeah, Beck and Lisa, if you have any input on how you found the project work. Lisa, you're going to answer?
Yeah, I was just gonna say, like, comparing guided work versus open-ended work, it's kind of the same thing in a way, because it's guided as in we have an a brief to complete, like we have a set of tasks to do, but you kind of can branch out of what you're specifically doing. You have like a guided list of what to do, but there's lots of ways to branch out and make it your own original design.
Great, thank you so much. And then the question around a portfolio, is a portfolio required as part of the entry requirements? And the answer is no, portfolio is not required. But Alice, maybe you wanted to comment on maybe the rationale behind not having a portfolio, or if students how they know they might be a good fit for the program if they haven't done an artistic kind of subject for the Leaving Cert.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting one because across the disciplines, there's a balance and there's a range of students who come to us, so I suppose we don't require a portfolio maybe for that reason. But so we'll have students who come to us from quite a creative background. I think as Lisa mentioned, she liked drawing, she liked sketching, but we'll also have students who come to us from maybe a more technical background. And then we also have students who are interested in things like sociology and history. And so you'll get a range of skills. I think maybe the main kind of factor that will and you develop and learn skills through the program as well, like we start in first year foundation where you're learning skills for design studio, representation skills, but also research skills and writing skills. You learn as you go, but I think the main thing that drives you is maybe a curiosity about the built environment, about how to develop it, how to better it, and an interest in people as well. I think those two things kind of together, I think help drive a student and help kind of within all of that open-ended and exploratory work, help to direct it. So it's a very broad answer, but we have a very broad range of skills, and there are many different areas that you can go into and specialize in. But we start, quite broadly.
No, that's great. I think that's very helpful. And I suppose this one's for the kind of students. Again, Lisa or Beck, or for the other students want to comment on their workload as well. Is there time for a job, a part-time job, clubs outside of the class, and kind of how do you find that with your workload?
Well, in first year and second year, I did have a job, a part-time job just for the weekends. And then in third year, suppose I had to quit in like after first semester because of the workload, just because it's your like final semester before, you know. But I suppose in first year and second year, it's quite easy to work weekends or even a day, because you do have Thursdays off. Um, in first year, the workload is quite lighter than third year, I suppose. So yeah, it is doable during the weekends.
Great. So I suppose it comes down to individual time management and how you find, and maybe planning to get into the course and settle in before you start deciding, how you're managing with your time. And then there was the question again, was an incoming international student from the US. So welcome, and we're excited to have you with us in September. And they have just any advice for making friends and building support network on campus. And I suppose this applies across the board for all these programs, if anyone wants to comment on that.
Yeah, I can come
Matthias?
in on that. I think the biggest thing is know that like everyone is in the same, I suppose, boat as you. If you're coming into first year, no one knows anyone. There's chances are you might have a few people that have, Dublin's not really a massive place, so people will inevitably know each other, as you will come to find out. But also, a majority of people are coming from across the country, and they won't have a clue who anyone is. So the biggest thing I think for me is, sit down, have a coffee with someone, get involved in societies, whether it's ArcSoc, LARCSoc, or PepSoc, get involved in things like the Students' Union, and just, I suppose, get to know people. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's solid advice across the board. And then Alice, I might just go to yourself. Obviously, we have a big domestic Irish cohort of students who will come to architecture, but we also will have students from other EU countries and outside the EU. Do you find that they settle in just as well as our Irish cohort of students and they get along just fine?
Absolutely. And I think we really welcome that as well because, architecture, the built environment, yes, it's all around us in Ireland, but it's everywhere. And a lot of our students, go on to practice both in the EU, US, and further afield, So, and we have students as part of our Erasmus partnerships, we have international students coming here in exchange for our students going there. So we find it works really well, and that it brings students, particularly coming into the undergraduate program, from other cultures and countries, like they bring a lot with them, and it really enriches, particularly our studio program when we're thinking about design and we're thinking about how to design for different communities, different people, but also then just in terms of the culture of the class and the culture of inquiry, we find it works really, really well. Yeah.
Perfect. Yeah, that'll be a comfort to that student. And then again, this not specifically one of our programs. They didn't mention which one, but if anyone wants to jump in, are there exams in first year, or is it continuous assessment, or how does it work for students when they come in, and the structure of the program with exams and assessment?
I'll begin.
Matthias, yeah.
I won't speak for architecture. I'll speak for planning, however. There is no formal exams in first and second year. There is some in third year. This may have changed because there is some restructuring of the programs happening. But as far as I'm aware, there's no exams, formal exams in first and second year. A lot of our work would be kind of essays and projects. There may be some, I suppose, in-class tests sprinkled in towards the end of the semester in some classes, but that's not definitely not the norm. So a lot of it is essays and different sorts of projects.
Yeah, and Livia, I don't know if you wanted to comment from a landscape architecture point of view as well.
Yeah, most of our grades would come from the exhibitions, the projects, very similar to planning, I suppose. Um, we would have smaller exams, maybe coming from modules or things like that, things you choose in addition to the studio module. But looking at just the degrees in themselves, I don't think, yeah, you wouldn't have formal exams like that. You'd have grades coming from the projects. Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm guessing it's the same then, very similar for
Yeah,
architecture as well.
I'd say so.
Yeah. So in architecture, there there's only an exam in the history and theory program. There are smaller, maybe MCQ kind of tests in some of, I think, the tech modules, but most of our modules, and the studio in particular, is assessed via portfolio or projects. So it's like there's a series of projects that you either present or you hand in throughout the term, and it's marked based on that. So I think across the history and theory program, we have reintroduced an exam, and there's maybe one per term because whenever the history and theory modules are on, and that's, yeah.
Great, good to know. And then what are the societies like, and what would you do, particularly this person's interested in ArcSoc? So what happens within ArcSoc? Lisa or Beck, if you want to jump in there.
I know we have like nights out, like say there was like a Halloween one and like events like that, end of term, maybe stuff like that. Um, I think the main thing they do is like, and then there's sometimes like little games and things that could be at like lunchtime. Um, kind of just things aside from strictly academic um work like that. Just kind of fun little things to do together, get to know people in your course.
Yeah, I heard you did a sports day recently or something.
Oh yeah, there was a like soccer tournament between the different years and stuff.
Yeah, great. Thank you very much. And I know one or two you've mentioned a couple of the other societies that you're involved in as well. So plenty to do on campus here for our students. And then are there any late night projects in first year, or would they happen over numerous years in the program? I suppose, yeah, what's the kind of structure of the like, are you working late into the evening, access to the studio, that kind of thing?
Yeah, I suppose w- the architecture curriculum, it is a very full curriculum. So we're accredited, and we're accredited by three different bodies: the Irish architectural body, the UK architectural body, and the US one, which means our students can work all over the world, but it also means there's a lot our program has to cover. So in first year in architecture, you're programmed and timetabled pretty much from either 9 or 10 in the morning to, it depends, 5:36 in the evening, depending on when studio finishes up. It's a full day. Now the studios are open and available until 10 p.m. every night, but that doesn't mean that you'll be working there every night like that. And we don't program anything late in at night. There are times, particularly coming to the end of term review, where students might need to work late in the studio a little bit, but we don't encourage that throughout the term. So there should be time for you to go to societies and other events, and like Becca was saying, have a job. But there is an issue with during the day when you're actually programmed in core modules, whereas in other courses you wouldn't be. You might have a bit more free time during the day.
Perfect. And then a question I always get asked is, do students need to purchase a particular laptop coming in, and do they need to be or have access to specific design programs? I suppose
Yeah.
softwares and things like
Yeah.
that.
So coming straight into the program, no, because we start with a kind of very analog, kind of hands-on approach. So what we say to students is, coming into the program, just bring whatever laptop or tablet you use and that you have. Don't invest in the laptop, or don't be aiming to invest in the laptop until halfway through first year. So at the start of first year, in the first couple of weeks, we have a digital literacy workshop, and that's where we introduce to you our laptop spec that we have developed that will take you through your first 3 years. And we'll talk to you about that. We'll talk to you about filing, about managing your files, kind of how to, how to buy your laptop, how to print, all that kind of stuff. And then as you go through the program, we start to introduce software. Now we prioritize free software, but there are for software where you can get an educational license, which is free. But there are one or two areas where we do need you do need to purchase a subscription to software, and that happens in second year and third year, and that's in relation to the Adobe suite of programs, which are excellent image editing and graphic design, and they're industry standard. But they do not they have an educational license, but it's the one type of program where they really resist giving away things for free. But we do look into like open source alternatives for that. So the key is, come with what you have. You will need a laptop as you go through the course, but we introduce to you what you need when you get into first year. Because what was happening in the past, the students were buying a laptop coming into first year, and it wasn't really up to the spec for the sort of requirements of the course. Didn't mean like they could have been very expensive laptops. It didn't mean that, you have to buy a very expensive laptop. It's just that there's aspects of the specification of the laptop that kind of are related to the performance of your computer, that will be very helpful for you to have in place by the time you get to third year, so that you're able to manage all of those big, amazing drawings and files that you have.
Perfect. Thank you. That's very helpful. Alice, thank you. Matthias, just for yourself, if a student's here and they're kind of more interested in city planning, or they're more interested in environmental policy, are you able to pick modules and steer yourself towards maybe one aspect or the other, or do you cover everything?
No. So we cover everything, whether you like it or not. You get both planning and environmental policy. Now, the thing is, those two, I think, go massively hand in hand because in terms of environmental policy, we learn about, um, ecosystems and the natural environment and things like sustainable development goals, all those sorts of things, different kind of types of environmental policies and how they affect people. And I think that is um, a massive, I suppose, thing to know as a planner is how a project or a certain building development may interact with the environment, what sort of environmental consequences there are. And there's obviously in the planning profession, there's certain environmental regulations that you need to have to keep in mind when you're either preparing a planning proposal or assessing one in a local authority. So you don't get to pick. You do get to pick in a way, in the sense that you do have your elective modules, and you can sort of steer to the side of one or the other. I personally, I took a module on cultural heritage last semester, and one with Alice there on photography and the built environment. So I'm very much staying within that kind of planning and heritage, that kind of area. But you could also take, an environmental science module or something if you're interested in it, or something completely different like a language. You could do. There's so many languages to choose from in UCD, from Italian to Chinese, and are genuinely thousands of modules that you can freely choose from, provided there's spaces.
Brilliant. And then Matteo, sticking with yourself just for a sec. You mentioned like planning like policies and laws and things like that. Are you learning things just in an Irish context, or what you're learning is applicable internationally or for the rest of Europe and things like that as well?
Generally, a lot of the stuff we do in terms of regulation and laws is in the Irish context. So that's the Planning Development Acts, the Planning Development Regulations, ministerial guidelines, National Development Plan, National Planning Framework, all those sort of things, big, massive documents that that is very beneficial to actually get accustomed with maybe before you come in. But I think a lot of the ideas and kind of concepts that we learn do apply on a global stage, and we do take a kind of zoomed out look at it, I suppose, through modules like social spatial dynamics, which kind of show us through an economic point of view how cities have developed over the years and how people have moved around and why have they moved around and that sort of stuff. But in terms of the regulations and laws and stuff, it's very much, I suppose, the Irish context, with maybe some examples taken from international best practice when it comes to like projects and stuff.
Great, thank you. And then for architecture students, are the modules kind of year long? Are there many changes between models? Alice, I don't know if you wanted to talk about kind of how the program is structured in that respect.
Yeah, no. So we work per term. So we've got the autumn, what we call trimester in UCD, and the spring trimester. So your module will only ever be the length of that trimester, which is a 12-week. But what does happen, which I mentioned, I think, in my introduction, in the final year of study, the students are working on a kind of sustained line of inquiry, which does go across those two terms, but it's via two separate modules. They'll do part of it in one and part in the other, but they're kind of following the same, I suppose, design project across that, or the same kind of research project across that. I hope that makes sense.
Yeah, I think so. Thank you. So that's all the open questions that we have for our webinar today. So unless anyone has any further questions, they want to pop in really quickly, I think we've reached the end. Before we wrap up, just to let you know that if you do have follow-up questions or would like any additional resources after today, please don't hesitate to reach out to us. And my colleague Katie's popping our contact details in the chat there. And then thank you to everyone who joined us for your questions, for your time and your engagement today. We hope you found it useful, and we look forward to connecting with you in the future and hopefully seeing some of you as students kind of in the next year. Just a big thank you to our speakers as well, and enjoy the rest of your evening. Thanks, everyone. Bye.